Everyone talks about investing, building credit scores, and maximizing returns, but almost nobody talks about the actual power of just having cash sitting in your account, real money that you can access right now without selling anything, without waiting for approval, and without jumping through hoops. Keeping substantial cash reserves might be the most powerful financial position you could possibly be in. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything the experts say but still feeling financially stressed, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. Most financial advice optimizes for numbers on a spreadsheet, higher returns, lower fees, and maximum compounding. But numbers on paper don't equal power in real life. Think of it like having a PhD in nutrition versus actually being healthy. Knowing the optimal strategy doesn't help if it leaves you stressed and trapped. Real wealth isn't just about net worth. It's about options, freedom, and the ability to act when everyone else is frozen. First, cash gives you power during chaos. Everyone talks about buying the dip and being greedy when others are fearful. But here is what actually happens during market crashes. Most people can't do anything about it because their money is already invested and probably down 30 to 40%. They're too scared to sell at a loss, getting margin calls, or watching their portfolio bleed. The last thing they can do is come up with fresh cash to invest, so they remain paralyzed. But the person with substantial cash reserves is shopping and buying assets at 50 cents on the dollar. They're picking up rental properties from desperate sellers and acquiring businesses that are temporarily struggling but fundamentally sound. They're making deals that will define their wealth for the next decade. This isn't theory. This is exactly what happened in 2008 and 2020, and it will happen again in the next downturn. Let's say you kept $200,000 in cash for years while your friends constantly gave you grief about it. They would calculate how much you were losing to inflation and show you charts of what that money could have become in index funds. They would mock you for being too conservative until 2020 happened and markets crashed 35% in a single month. Everyone was panicking about jobs, businesses, and mortgage payments, while you remained completely calm. You had options, you had power, and while everyone else was in survival mode, you went shopping. You bought stocks at incredible discounts and picked up a commercial property from a panicked seller at 40% below market value. 5 years later, that $200,000 in cash that everyone mocked had turned into over $800,000 in assets. But more importantly, you never felt stressed or trapped during one of the most chaotic periods in modern history. That's the difference between being technically rich on paper and being actually powerful in real life. Second, cash gives you walkaway power, which is the most underrated benefit that absolutely nobody talks about. How much would your life change if you had 2 years of expenses sitting in cash right now? When you're not desperate, people can sense it, and employers know you're choosing to work there, which paradoxically makes them value you more. Even in personal relationships, not being financially dependent changes the entire dynamic in healthy ways. The people with the most financial stress are usually the ones making the most money but spending every penny to maintain an expensive lifestyle. They're trapped by golden handcuffs, unable to make any changes because their expensive life requires their expensive income. Meanwhile, someone earning half as much but keeping substantial cash reserves has infinitely more freedom and power. They can take risks, they can try new things, and they can walk away from anything that doesn't serve them. Third, opportunity cost works both ways. Even though everyone focuses on how cash loses purchasing power to inflation, this is the main argument against keeping substantial cash reserves. But investments also have costs that nobody wants to talk about. First, there's market risk, where your portfolio can lose 30, 40, or even 50% of its value in months. Sure, it usually recovers eventually, but what if you need that money during the down period? A job loss or medical emergency happens when your portfolio is down. You're forced to sell at the worst time. Suddenly, you're locking in losses that would have recovered if you just had cash to cover the emergency instead. Then there's the less obvious cost, because opportunity cost works both ways. Yes, cash sitting idle might miss out on investment returns, but money locked up in investments also misses out on cash opportunities. That rental property selling for half price because the owner is desperate cannot be bought if all your money is in stocks. That business opportunity that requires immediate capital is not possible if you do not have liquid resources. Missing a 10% annual return on $100,000 costs you $10,000 per year, but missing out on a single once-in-a-decade opportunity to buy an asset at 50% off could cost you hundreds of thousands. Everyone focuses on the steady, predictable opportunity cost of holding cash, while ignoring the massive cost of not having it. Peter has $150,000 fully invested in a diversified portfolio and has done everything right according to conventional wisdom. When the market crashes, his portfolio drops to $90,000, and he needs $30,000 for an emergency. This forces him to sell investments at the worst time, locking in losses that would have recovered if he just had cash to cover the emergency instead. Richard kept $50,000 in cash, which his financial advisor constantly criticized. When the same emergency happened, Richard used his cash reserves and left his investments alone so they could recover fully. Even better, he used another $20,000 of his cash to buy stocks at crash prices, which tripled in value over the decade. This represents the same emergency with completely different outcomes, all because one person had cash and the other didn't. Fourth, cash isn't defense, it's offense, because cash is your opportunity fund that allows you to play when others sit on the bench. The wealthiest people understand this instinctively and don't see cash as dead money earning nothing. They see cash as loaded weapons waiting for the perfect target. Warren Buffett regularly keeps tens of billions in cash, often holding $100 billion or more in Berkshire Hathaway. He keeps massive cash reserves because he understands that the best investment opportunities appear when everyone else is broke. Every market crash, recession, and crisis creates incredible opportunities for those who have cash to deploy. But those opportunities only exist because most people don't have cash available when they need it most. If everyone had substantial reserves, there would be no distressed sales, no panic selling, and no deals to be made. The standard advice is 3 to 6 months of expenses for an emergency fund, but that's just a basic safety net. What I'm describing is keeping enough cash that you could actually do something significant with it if an opportunity appeared. For most people, this means at least 1 year of expenses in cash, ideally closer to 2 years. On top of that, you want an opportunity fund specifically for things like real estate down payments or startup capital. I can already hear the objections about losing 3% to inflation on $100,000 in cash. That sounds terrible until you consider the alternative scenario where you're fully invested and the market drops.
There's a balance, and that balance probably includes more cash than conventional wisdom suggests. Fifth, cash allows you to be patient with your other investments. When you know you have substantial liquid reserves, you can afford to be truly long-term with your investments. You never have to sell stocks at a bad time because you need money. You never have to liquidate real estate during a down market. This patience alone adds several percentage points to your annual returns by avoiding forced selling. Let's say your monthly expenses are $4,000, which equals $48,000 per year. 2 years of expenses means you need $96,000 in cash, plus another $50,000 as your opportunity fund. That's $146,000 total in cash, which might be 33% of your net worth. Financial advisors would tell you you're crazy and calculate that you're losing over $4,000 per year to inflation. But that cash bought you complete psychological peace for a decade and the ability to sleep well regardless of conditions. You gained walkaway power, the ability to buy during crashes, and protection from forced selling. Poor Peter saves that $43,000 by staying fully invested, but loses $80,000 when he's forced to sell during a crash. He misses another $100,000 in gains by not having cash to buy when assets are 50% off. Rich Richard keeps his cash and loses $43,000 to inflation, but makes $200,000 buying during the crash. He switches to a better job that pays more because he had the runway to take that risk. This entire system is designed to make you feel guilty about holding cash in your checking account. Every article tells you to stay fully invested, every calculator shows inflation loss, and every advisor pushes for maximum invested assets. But the wealthiest people I know, the ones with real power, all understand what I'm telling you. They keep substantial cash reserves because cash is the most powerful financial tool there is. Cash is options. Cash is freedom. Cash is the ability to act when others can't.